Being John Malkovich is an American fantasy comedy film released in the year 1999. The plot of the film follows an unemployed puppeteer, Craig, who reluctantly takes up a job as a filing clerk. Craig's life takes a sharp turn when he discovers a portal that leads him directly to the mind of the Hollywood actor John Malkovich. However, when he lets his wife and coworker in on the secret, he finds himself entangled in a situation that is difficult to escape. Set in New York City, the film opens with Craig Schwartz, a puppeteer practicing a puppet show at home. Though his puppetry skills are phenomenal, he suffers from unemployment. The scene cuts to him waking up in the morning when his wife's parrot disturbs his sleep. Craig's wife, Lottie, is a pet lover who keeps pushing Craig to look for a job. Craig brushes her off by saying that nobody needs a puppeteer in the town. Lottie asks him to do something else until the puppet thing turns around. While Lottie works at a pet shop, Craig looks after her pets at home. He spends time with Lottie's monkey while watching TV. Craig thinks that consciousness is a terrible curse as it makes him feel, think, and suffer. It turns out that Craig likes to raise serious issues prevalent in society, but nobody seems to like them, which is why he is suffering to get a job. In his free time, he sets up puppetry shows on the street, but people get offended by the topics he tries to portray. Every now and then, they beat him up for his puppeteering. Frustrated from unemployment and dejection, he starts looking for jobs in a newspaper and comes across a title called Looking for a Man with Fast Hands for the file clerk position at Lester Corp organization. This intrigues him and he decides to apply for the job. Due to his puppetry skill, Craig is proficiently great with using his hands and has nimble and dexterous fingers for speed filing. The following morning, he goes for the interview in the Merton Flemmer building on the floor between the 7th and 8th, called 7.5, where the ceiling is quite low. Upon entering, he faces a hard time with the receptionist named Florence, who happens to have a hearing problem. Finally, he gets to meet the strange Dr. Lester, who is impressed by Craig's filing skills and immediately gives him the job. Before leaving Lester's office, Craig curiously asks him why the ceilings are so low. Lester assures him that all his queries about the infamous floor will be answered in the orientation. Craig attends the orientation class only to discover that the building's owner's wife was accursed due to her short height, and so he wanted to create a safe place for her with low ceilings. During the orientation, Craig is distracted by a beautiful coworker, Maxine Lund, sitting in the corner of the room. After the class, he tries to interact with Maxine, but to no avail. At home, Lottie keeps talking to Craig, but he doesn't show much interest in her. When Lottie brings up the idea of planning a baby, Craig asks her to wait for him to become economically stable. In the office, Craig develops an attraction to Maxine, who keeps rejecting his advances. Lester finds Craig talking to Florence and becomes jealous. He warns him from toying with her and expresses that if he were a bit young, Florence would have gotten together with him. He then invites Craig on a juice date after work so he can talk to him about his sexual fantasies. Later, Craig once again tries to hit on Maxine, who finally relents and asks him to meet her at a restaurant at 7 p.m. After work, Craig goes with Lester on a juice date. While Lester keeps talking about random stuff, Craig can't stop looking at the clock. 2 minutes into 7 p.m., he asks Lester to let him leave. He rushes to the restaurant and barely reaches there in time. Unable to hold his feelings, he immediately tells Maxine that he's attracted to her. Maxine starts showing some interest, but when Craig mentions that he is a puppeteer, she bolts instantly. Craig reaches home and starts being nice to Lottie to recompense for his guilt. However, Lottie does not pay attention to him and goes to sleep. Neglected, Craig spends the night polishing his puppet's nails. That night, he puts on a puppet show portraying himself and Maxine as puppets, and enacting his fantasies for her. The next day in the office, while filing, Craig drops one of the files which falls behind a drawer. In the process of retrieving it, he discovers a small hidden door. Behind the door, he finds a tunnel and decides to crawl through it. Halfway through the tunnel, the door shuts behind him and he's pushed into another world. Soon he finds himself inside the mind of actor John Malkovich, following his life through his eyes. A few minutes later, Craig is ejected through a tunnel and he lands in a ditch on the side of the New Jersey Turnpike. Thrilled, he reaches the office and tells Maxine about the portal. Maxine doesn't show any excitement and asks him who John Malkovich is. Craig explains that he is one of the greatest American actors of the 20th century. Maxine remains incurious about it and leaves the office. Later, after giving it a little thought, she calls Craig and tells him to exploit the tunnel by selling tickets for the experience to gain profit. Craig is flattered by Maxine's call, but expresses his concern about whether or not it's safe to toy with the tunnel. Maxine cunningly assures him that nothing will go wrong. Later, Craig tells Lottie about his new business plan with Maxine. At first, Lottie denies believing it, but then asks him to show him the tunnel. Craig takes her to the office, and she's astonished to see the portal. She enters it and finds John Malkovich taking a shower in his bathroom. Craig waits for her by the side of the New Jersey Turnpike, and after 15 minutes, Lottie lands there. As soon as Lottie leaves the portal, everything starts making sense to her, and she becomes obsessed. She insists Craig take her back to the portal, but Craig refuses as they are supposed to have dinner with Lester. At Lester's home, Lottie is amused to find a room that seems like some sort of John Malkovich's museum. While heading home after dinner, she asks Craig about John's relationship with Lester, but does not tell him about the room. Craig thinks that Lester must be unaware of John's portal. Lottie can't stop talking about the portal, and expresses that she felt pleased to feel John's sexual side. The next day, she arrives at Craig's office unannounced and insists on going inside the tunnel. When Craig hesitates, Lottie expresses that her experience last night awakened her transgender identity. Craig flips out after hearing this, and more so when Lottie mentions getting sexual reassignment surgery. Craig thinks it's absurd and starts yelling at her. Lottie requests him not to stand in the way of her actualization. Finally, Craig relents when Maxine asks him to fulfill Lottie's wish. Maxine gets John's contact number and calls him while he's inhabited by Lottie. She tells him that she is his great admirer and invites him on a date at 8 p.m. Lottie happens to be listening to the conversation and, after 15 minutes, lands in the ditch. She tells Craig that she has been in John's mind at 8 p.m. John feels oddly compelled to go on the date and is infatuated to meet Maxine. Lottie, who is in John's mind at the moment, is even more intrigued to see Maxine. After visiting the portal, Craig drives Lottie back home and asks her about the experience. She does not tell him about Maxine's date with John and instead asks him to invite Maxine over for dinner. Soon enough, Maxine and Craig start the portal business and earn money. Lottie invites Maxine to dinner and the three of them interact courteously. After dinner, Lottie and Craig are unable to resist Maxine and jump onto her. Maxine slaps Craig but tells Lottie that she is smitten by her, only when she is inside Malkovich. Craig loses his mind, seeing the two women of his life getting along and isolating him. Following Lottie's request, Maxine arranges another date with John and manipulates him into having sex with her while Lottie is in his mind. The three of them enjoy themselves, after which Lottie returns home feeling guilty. When Craig asks her what she was up to, she confesses that she and John are in love with Maxine. Craig feels disappointed and dejected. The next day at the office, he gets even more infuriated when Maxine tells him that she is not into him but instead into Lottie. This outrages him and he rushes into his house and hides. When Lottie returns from work, he guns her down, forcing her to call Maxine and arrange another rendezvous with John before locking her in a cage. He then inhabits John and enjoys sex with Maxine while taking control of John. John feels disturbed by his loss of control and realizes that he is being compelled. On the other hand, Craig is over the moon after he discovers that his puppeteering skills allow him some control over John. Meanwhile, John is worried that someone was inside his body and was speaking through his mouth. He tells his friend Charles about it, who figures out that Maxine might be channeling her lesbian lover through him. John becomes suspicious of her and follows her to the office where she carries out her portal business at night with Craig. He asks one of the customers about the service and is shocked to find out the service charges $200 to be John Malkovich for 15 minutes. Furious, John rushes into the room and asks Craig what is going on. He enters his own portal only to discover a world where everyone looks like him and says only Malkovich. John becomes hysterical, and after he's ejected, he demands Craig seal his portal forever. Craig refuses to comply and claims that he was the one who discovered the portal in the first place. John fumes with anger and threatens to sue him. Craig returns home and tricks Lottie into thinking that he feels shameful about his acts. But it turns out that he once again forces her to call Maxine and set up a tryst with John. After Craig leaves, Lottie is freed by her monkey. She quickly calls Maxine and informs her that Craig was inhabiting John all this time. However, Maxine is more attracted to Craig's ability to control him and ignores Lottie. Maxine then reaches John's house when he's inhabited by Craig, and despite John's reluctance, the two decide to make out. Meanwhile, in the middle of a rainy night, Lottie arrives at Lester's house and tells him about her unhealthy obsession with John Malkovich. She confronts her about his collectibles and asks him what kind of power John exudes that makes her want to be like him. Lester reveals that he is not Lester, but in fact, Captain Merton, who discovered the portal to be a vessel body 90 years ago, which made him realize that he could live forever by leaping from vessel to vessel. Meanwhile, Craig discovers he can occupy John indefinitely. On the other hand, Lester explains that he has obtained immortality by moving from one body to the next, which becomes ripe on the host's 44th birthday, allowing him to take control. If he enters the portal past midnight on that day, he will instead be trapped in the next newborn vessel, which he does not want, as he will be held prisoner in the host's brain. Lester then introduces Lottie to his group of friends who plan to inhabit John once he turns 44. Meanwhile, Craig in John's body puts up an incredible puppet show for Maxine. He then decides to use John's existing notoriety to launch his own puppeteering career. On the other hand, Lottie warns Lester and his friends that Craig is taking control of John's vessel. While inhabiting John, Craig officially converts him to a puppeteer. 8 months later, it's revealed that Craig inhabiting John married Maxine, who becomes pregnant. Moreover, John Malkovich is reinvited into a famous puppeteer who gains tremendous success. His rise to fame brought about a renaissance in the art of puppeteering. His technical skills breathe life into inanimate objects, making him the talk of the town. He and Maxine are considered the epitome of love, and people are inspired to see their bond. In the present, Lottie fumes with anger seeing John's documentary. On John's upcoming 44th birthday, he returns home after a show only to discover that Maxine got kidnapped by Lester. Lester demands Craig leave John Malkovich's body, or else he will kill Maxine, but Craig hangs up. Frantic, Lottie attempts to shoot the pregnant Maxine, who escapes into the portal. Lottie pursues her through John's subconscious, despite Lester's disapproval, and after a long chase, both are ejected. When Lottie questions Maxine about her integrity, she reveals that she is pregnant with Lottie's child as the baby was conceived while Lottie was in Malkovich's mind. Lottie is elated to hear the news. Meanwhile, Craig loses his mind, thinking that Maxine is in danger. He calls Lester and asks him not to kill Maxine as he is ready to leave John's mind. While Lester and his friends enter the portal before midnight, Maxine and Lottie patch up. Craig goes ballistic after discovering that Maxine ditched him and got together with Lottie. He vows to re-enter the portal to take back John's mind. 7 years later, John has gotten old and is married to Florence. He tells his friend Charlie that he has figured out a way for them to live forever. He then takes Charlie into a museum-type room that has everything related to Maxine's daughter, Emily, in it. It turns out that Lester inhabiting John now wants to extend their lives via the portal, which now leads to Emily's mind. The film ends with a revelation that Craig, who entered the portal past midnight, got permanently trapped inside Emily, and ever since then he's compelled to watch Maxine and Lottie enjoying their happily ever after through Emily's mind. This movie has a rating of 7.8 on IMDb. The budget of this movie was around $13 million, and at the box office, it earned $32.4 million. I hope you all liked this video. If yes, Then make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.